Alrighty, Melanie, welcome to our podcast. You're here today with me, Landon Resendiz, and my co-host, Kira Parsons. Welcome on in.
Thank you.
Great to have you here. I know before we hit record, we started to talk a little bit about how you're actually in Brooklyn right now, and I know that that's your hometown, born and raised in Brooklyn, right?
That's right. I'm a Brooklyn girl through and through. Um, yeah, when my family came to this country from Haiti, this is where they settled.
Right. We'll definitely get into your Haitian ascent definitely later today. But I know New York City is known for being the jazz capital of the world, and I want to start with how does your upbringing in New York City and Brooklyn, particularly, influence your entrance into the jazz space? Let's start with that.
Well, that's interesting. My mom, she loved jazz a lot. She said back in Haiti, growing up, she didn't listen to like a lot of the traditional music like compas and stuff like that. She was more interested in American jazz. And so growing up, she would take me to a lot of the New York City jazz clubs, two of which are closed now. There's one, St. Nick's Pub, that was on 145th and St. Nick's. She would take my brother and I, we were like 10, 12, 15, 16-year olds, with their mom in the jazz club. And I really must say that like being brought up in that type of culture instilled the love of jazz for me, for sure.
So definitely a very early hobby for you that ended up turning into a profession.
For sure. I mean, it was never a hobby. It was always what I did. My mom says that before I could speak, I was like humming and stuff. And like, she was like, okay, well, this girl is going to be musical, and like I always say, people who have like special stories where they say, oh, I remember when I heard this album, that's when I know I wanted to make music, or when this happened. Unfortunately, I don't have like that romantic story. It's just I always just did music, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
It's kind of an interesting feeling.
Well, as long as it's good enough to now bring Melanie Charles into the world of jazz. So definitely.
Hi, Melanie.
Hey.
If it wasn't for your mom to get you involved with vocal lessons, do you believe you would have become a singer?
I really ask myself that a lot, like especially now as things are getting even harder for me in my career. I'm grateful, but there's like the more opportunities, like the more challenges kind of thing, And, sometimes I wonder if I wasn't so supported the way I was, would I be as ambitious? I don't know. I think that I'm super privileged to have had a support system, because a lot of people, they have to like convince their parents to like help them, with their dreams, especially as artists, So I don't know. That's a good question that I don't think I'll ever really know the answer to.
I know that you also come from Haitian descent, as you had mentioned earlier, and you've also been recognized by the Haitian Jazz Foundation as, quote, one of the most important women in Haitian music. And how does that background influence you and now your musical style today?
Yeah, I really believe that the closer we get to understanding our cultures, the more we'll understand ourselves. And the more our creation, our art, everything that we do is more authentic and original. So when I was at the New School, I was approached to sing at this concert. They were like showcasing Haitian women in jazz. And there aren't many people that fill that description. And at the time, I wasn't singing in Creole at all, but I said yes to the challenge. And that was like my dive into the more Creole side, my Haitian side. Because remember, as I said, my mom is more interested in American jazz. So it's sort of like my own journey into discovering the voodoo culture, the folk songs from the island. And, at this point, every time I perform, anytime I record something, I always try to pay my respects to my Haitian ancestors. And it really has allowed me to discover different parts of my voice. Like I noticed when I sing in Creole, just automatically it taps into a different part of my voice. And like, just like understanding the stories that these songs tell, it really has helped me find my own individuality as an artist. And also it just adds more potency to my everyday life. So I encourage anyone who's listening, like whatever culture you are, like whatever like your parents are into, like if you can like dig into that, because there's a lot of gems in that.
If you really think about, what you said right there, it's kind of like you're breaking away from your culture. When I say culture, I mean like your home life, your mom like that American style jazz, and then you're going back into like your actual culture, with the Haitian background and putting that as the face of your music. And that's great that you have the best of both worlds there.
So, did you start playing the flute when you were in high school? I feel like I read that somewhere.
Yes, I started playing flute in high school and I didn't want flute. I wanted like a louder instrument. But by the time I joined band, like that was the only instrument that was left. But
Hmm.
now I like it now.
So, what first got you interested?
In what, the flute?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. With time, I kind of ended up just really liking the instrument. I like how light it is. At first I wanted some, like I said earlier, something loud like trumpet or saxophone.
Yeah.
But I like how the flute has become sort of like an extension of myself. I started classically when I was in high school, and I love classical music. I love Baroque music.
Hmm.
There's something about playing class music that's already like written for you. That's like very therapeutic. Like improvisation is like you constantly are like composing, but like in classical music, it's already composed for you, and all you have to do is just interpret someone's story.
Yeah.
So I ended up really, really loving that actually.
Yeah.
Speaking of your story a little bit, I know that you mentioned that music was a very big thing for you at such a young age. You mentioned the humming at a young age, and that was already introducing you, to a sense, the music world. And
Mhm.
do you know that you wanted to pursue music from the beginning, like at that stage? Did you know that that was going to be your future, or was that just, something that you were into, not really thinking that it would be, the rest of your life?
Well, I was really lucky when, even like I said, from a young age, my mom put me in like talent shows, and like I felt like I think my mom was in the best way, what you would call a stage mom. You know what I mean? Like I did pageants, and like I was like in like youth, like semi-professional youth ensembles. Like that was like always, dance classes. I definitely was like nurtured. Like a lot of young people, when their parents see they have something, they put them in, like you kind of know that that's going to be part of your life. So yeah, that was always going to be what I was going to do. For a moment, I also was interested in being like a news reporter. Like I thought I was going to go to school for communications, because I was into that. But essentially, I was always going to be the singing girl, the art girl. I was always a weird art girl. You know what I'm saying?
So then, of course, your future in the arts and all of your work in the arts at such a young age, you would definitely say that that was your mom and your parents that had brought that forth to you.
Yeah, I think that, I was exposed to it, I took a liking to it, and then I had the support. And that's the trifecta of it all. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
Bringing it back to the flute, what was
Mhm.
the first song that you learned on it?
Oh man, I don't think I could remember what the first song was. But it probably was like a Baroque tune.
Hmm. When I was playing the guitar, I'd say the first song I learned was like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star or something.
Okay, word up. That sounds about right. That sounds about
Yeah.
right.
Do you still practice the flute?
I do. I don't practice as much as I want to be honest with you. I wish I had more time with it. But, at this point, there's this thing they talk about like road chops. When you're on the road, you just sort of get into a routine of playing. I definitely play my flute quite frequently, especially when I'm touring. But to have that one-on-one time with the instrument, I definitely would like to be better with that for sure.
Yeah.
Could you tell me a little bit about your quote unquote tiny desk concert that you had done last year on NPR? Of course, a great set, but I'm sure that it must have meant even more to you, especially as it was in honor of Black History Month. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was a really fun experience. It was challenging, because normally when the normal tiny desk, you get to go to the place, and it's the whole ritual and the culture of being in that beautiful space. But unfortunately, we were in a lockdown. In the lockdown, I think a lot of people who've had opportunities that they always wanted happen that actually ended up happening during the pandemic. I sort of mourn that because we didn't get to really experience it to its fullest. So anyway, so that's one piece. And then also, having the beautiful challenge of basically producing this visual, this sound, this music, with my own resources, and pulling together the space and the videoing it. Some people don't know, but I had to do it twice because the first time we shot it, it was like out of focus and like there was some sound, some syncing issues. So I had to gather my whole band again and, people, to shoot it again. So, when people ask me questions about like those kinds of like moments that you just see the final version, I can't help but to think about like the challenges that like went around that. And I think like you knowing how challenging it was, but in spite all of that, I really am proud of that Tiny Desk. I think that I really created something really original, one of a kind. I'm really happy that I had my brother, my little brother, playing saxophone with me on there. I love him so much. He's amazing. My bass player, who I've played with for years, and then my usual drummer wasn't available since we had to reschedule it, and so Diego, who ended up playing, learned the music the night before, which is really like to me the epitome of what jazz is. Just like being able to go with the flow and jumping in. So yeah, I mean, this Tiny Desk thing is something that will live on forever, and I'm really proud of it. And like being chosen to do mine during Black History Month was definitely also really cool. And I was in good company. Wynton Marsalis also did one that month, and that so being like in conversation with a lot of artists that I really love and respect was awesome.
Definitely, and I'm glad that you mentioned too, like those behind the scenes aspects of the
Mm-hmm.
show, and like that's definitely a great thing to put forth to you as a person. When you watch back your show, you see the great impact that it's had on people, and you think, I did all this work, and then it turned into this great show. So it's definitely worth it for you in the end, and it's a great thing to look back on. That's great.
Absolutely.
How did Melanie Charles and the Journey come to be?
Oh, you went to the bag. You did your research, girl. Oh man. That's crazy. Melanie Charles and the Journey. So that was a band that I put together when I was at the New School. And I was really passionate about having like this 7-piece band, keys, bass, drums, guitar, 3 horns. I was really about the like big sound. I was really into RH Factor, Roy Hargrove and RH Factor. And so I was kind of like rebellious. Like I was trying to do this. I guess I'm still doing it, but that was a development of me trying to find a way to bring jazz back to the people and make it something fun. And I would gig around New York. I remember like going up down Broadway in Brooklyn with my little CD, and trying to like get a gig at like a bar, you know what I mean? Just like really like hustling. And a lot of the people that are in the Journey I still play with, like Axel Tosca, he's still my pianist now, and my brother. And yeah, like at my senior, the year that I graduated, I said to myself, I want to release an album. And so after my senior recital, I also did an album release at New Blue, and I released introducing Melanie Charles and the Journey. And to be honest, like, I don't know, now I listen to it and I kind of cringe. I'm not gonna lie. I listen to it and I'm like, ugh. But that was part of my journey, and it's interesting to see, how I've progressed and how things have developed from there. So yeah.
It's kind of funny how it's like started your journey and it's called Melanie Charles and the Journey.
Facts. That's right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That was exactly something I was going to say as well, about how that's something like that's her roots, that's what she started out as, and then seeing that improvement and constant progression over time, it's definitely something. And then, of course, going into your present here, you've played at so many different venues in so many different countries. I mean, some to note, you have Germany, Italy, and even France. And out of all of these performances, which would you say was your most notable venue and most notable performance?
Wow, that's a tough question. So far, my most notable, I guess I would say recently when I performed at X Jazz Festival in Berlin. That was really awesome because it was like a jazz festival, but it embodied how I feel about jazz, where it doesn't need to be sit down music. So it's like a standing room only, and like people were dancing and grooving and singing along, and like people came up to me and said how like they cried, and how like the experience really was like a healing thing for them. And the band and I, we really had a really good time. It really felt like, this is like exactly the type of energy that I want to feel whenever I'm performing. And Berlin is just such an amazing place and so alive and vibrant. And that was the first show of the tour, so it also like really put us in a good mood. So yeah, I would have to say Berlin 2022 X Jazz takes the cake.
Oh wow, I mean definitely, not only sharing that enthusiasm with you, in your group, but having that same enthusiasm and same light shine throughout your audience. That's fantastic. And I'm sure that must have been a great, heartfelt experience for you as well.
It really was.
Can you tell me a bit about your experience with SZA?
Oh man, yeah. Oh, SZA, I was a SZA fan like very early on, and like I went to see her at Afro Punk like the first year she performed there, type of vibes. And my friend Kaylee plays keys with SZA, and they were filming her SNL set, and they wanted flute. They put together like a small ensemble, and they wanted flute, and they reached out to me, and so I took the opportunity. And I tell you, like, SZA is like the sweetest, kindest. Like, she takes time to say hello and thank you to everybody, and it was like a huge production. And yeah, we did the weekend, and like I had this like awesome flute solo introduction, and I was so nervous. At the time, I had just became a Buddhist, so I was very serious about my chanting. And so it was like live TV, So they're like counting down, and 5, 4, and I'm like, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. And then it was time to play, and like the flute just played itself. And I was just like, God, please don't crack. Because that's the worst thing when you're the introduction and you crack, So I was just like, I cannot afford to crack. This is live TV. And it went really well. And yeah, that's definitely a highlight of my career so far. Kira, you asking all the good questions. You too, Landon. Don't feel bad. You're doing good too.
Thanks.
It must have been a relief to be like, wow, the flute played really well and I didn't mess up for anything.
Yeah, I'm really like proud of that. I still can't believe that I did that. And that's the beautiful thing about music. Like, it's really a spiritual thing. It's not about ego, like it wasn't because, oh, I'm so great that I played that well. It's because I was like connected and in the moment, and like it just happened on its own, kind of thing. So that was like a good, whenever I'm feeling discouraged or whatever, I think about that moment. That definitely fuels me and encourages me again.
Yeah.
So I'm sensing you may have a tick for some live TV then. So I'll touch on your appearances on Good Morning America and The Late Show with Stephen Colbert.
Okay,
yes. And can you tell us a little bit about those experiences and, of course, how it felt to be there?
Yeah, the Colbert was crazy because I was thinking with the Gorillaz, like, oh my God, I forget that I was on the Gorillaz album. And so yeah, when they were doing the promo tour, we did Colbert. That was amazing, super fun. The GMA Good Morning America with it was Jussie Smollett. That was cool. Yeah, there was definitely like an era where I was getting a lot of those kinds of calls. I guess also it's like pre-pandemic, I guess, and there was like a lot of performance opportunities. It feels like almost like another lifetime. You guys are referencing these like moments, and I don't know, it's fun and sweet and exciting, but it's just like, wow, like the music industry has changed so drastically from then. It's like kind of crazy, you know what I mean?
Do you have a favorite person in which you've collaborated with?
Let me see. That's a hard question.
Not to like pick favorites, just out of curiosity.
Yeah. Oh, I think it would be when I collaborated with Mock Homie. He's one of my favorite rappers that I discovered his work. And then like 2 years later, his team like looked me up and invited me to record on his album, Pray for Haiti. And I just like, we'd actually never met in real life. We just communicated via email and text and phone calls. But I feel like I learned so much from him in terms of like recording at home and like how to put together like a track that really like slaps, you know what I mean? And I really admire his work ethic and the way he's like really created such a mysterious persona, and how he's like really demands like that, like to be valued, you know. He really holds himself to a high standard. So I think I would say that's my, to so far, one of my top favorite collaborations.
Yeah.
Just recently mentioned about how the music industry has changed, over time, especially during the pandemic. I know one of your hits definitely has to be "Jazz Ain't Nothing But Soul," and could you tell me a little bit about the story behind that title and how it felt to go back with something from Betty Carter as well? And I'm sure that kind of goes back to the past, and then with this present with this new piece.
Mm. Yeah, Jazz Ain't Nothing But Soul. I learned about that song kind of late. I feel I like only found out about it like a year ago when I was working on the album. And I actually, Betty Carter is like the creme de la creme of jazz music, like not only as a vocalist, but she like mentored and taught like all of the important jazz musicians, many of which are still alive right now. But I was more like a Sarah Vaughan person, Nancy Wilson, Ella Fitzgerald person, until last year when I was invited to sing with Wynton Marsalis and the Lincoln Center Orchestra. And they were doing a tribute to a few jazz legends, and one of which was Betty Carter. And that's when I finally like got to that next level of like, because Betty is like so complex and like soulful and like risky. I kind of regret that I didn't get into her sooner. You know what I mean? I feel like I would have been an even better musician, but that's life. In any case, when I was doing my research for this album, Verve approached me, they were like, you have access to all of these records, like whatever you want to do. So I'm doing my research and I stumbled across Jazz and Nothing But Soul. And I'm like, yo, like that is literally my ethos of life. Like, like jazz is for us. It's soulful, it's taters, it's grits, it's like being real. And I just was like, oh my gosh, this song embodies everything that I am about. So I was really happy to be able to have an opportunity to make my own little flip of that. And that's also something that I think is at the core of when we talk about what is jazz. I think it's like taking a piece and reimagining it and making it your own. Some of the best jazz recordings that like historic ones were songs that were from musicals, that were pop songs that jazz musicians interpreted. So, I really am proud to be continuing in that tradition. And when I perform Jazz Ain't Nothing But Soul live, like the audience goes crazy because it's like, I'm always scared because the way I arranged it is a part where it kind of is rage, and like jazz heads, especially if they're more old school, may not necessarily be open to the rage, but somehow it still works. So I don't know. I'm really getting even more excited about performing this at Newport because like it's gonna be a vibe.
And I know, going into your present day and actually your past a little bit, I know a while ago now you had done a New York Times interview for their magazine. And in that, you had mentioned that you listen to music using mainly cassette tapes. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
wondering if that was still the case today, and what's the story behind that?
Yes, I love cassette tapes. To me, it really is, it's the experience of having something tangible. It's the sound. And I find that artists that take the time to put their music on tape, also, we kind of like share a similar ethos, if you will, of like sound, and it just ends up being a lot of the beat scene. And I just like love the sounds and rhythms and energy that these producers are making, and a lot of their music comes out on cassette tape. And so actually when I was just, before I was in Europe a few weeks ago, I was on tour with Sons of Kemet, which is a really credible band from the UK. They're also playing at Newport. And while I was in Cali, I really stocked up on a lot of cassette tapes. And I was thinking, man, I need to like get a cassette tape like lunchbox thing where I can just like travel with, like, I need to design that, you know what I mean? Because I definitely still love me some tapes. Actually, you can't see it, but my tape deck and some new fresh tapes are right over here to my left. So yeah.
So definitely a more authentic and fuller experience, you would say, with the cassettes.
Absolutely. for sure, for sure.
Got it.
Do you still play the piano?
I still do, actually. I actually was approached to submit for a musical that's about to go up, and they asked me to, the character that I was auditioning for plays piano, so I played and sang. So yeah, that's definitely still a part of my writing, and just like a rudimentary, just like grounding practice for me, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And Melanie, as any artist can really tell you, their music usually has a message embedded for the audience. And with your music, what would you say that your message is?
I think in general, I would just say my message is like, do you. I think that that's something that I've always been really committed to for myself. And I really believe in that, of like really being one of a kind and finding ways to whatever you do to bring your own sense of expression to it. I think that that's like really beautiful and honest. And every time people come to my shows, I just hope that they end up feeling like, like who I am is enough, is great. And whatever weird or strange ideas or projects or whatever like you want to do that like maybe people don't like support it or get it, that you feel encouraged to do it. That's really all in all, what I hope people feel when they experience my music.
So definitely, preach your values and your past, and especially with your culture, and keeping that all in check. And that's great to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like, as of the day of filming at least, you have a lot of national and international tour dates coming up. Could you tell me a little bit about, your recent tours, and how does it feel to go on tour?
Yeah. Well, I just came back from Germany, like I said. So I did X Jazz Festival, and then we did a couple of jazz clubs, one in Milan, one in Munich. And like I said before that, I was on tour opening up for Sons of Kemet, and that was in the US, and that was cool. And then in 2 weeks, I'm about to go on tour opening up for Corinne Bailey Rae, which I'm really excited about that. And then I'm out to Europe again. I'm doing Summer Stage, I'm doing NERC, I'm doing Montreal Jazz Fest, I'm doing Newport Jazz Fest. I'm doing like all the festivals that I always dreamed of doing. And so it's like pretty unreal. It's also a lot of work. Like touring has always been really hard. I'm not new to touring. I guess it's just new me being the band leader and like having an album out. In that sense, it's new for me in that way. When it comes to the travel and the suitcase and the gears, I'm kind of used to it. But I think post-pandemic, it makes things even more challenging. And I guess I am getting a little older. And so my body just like the rhythm, the heavy lifting. And, I travel with my SPs and my samplers and my loopers. And, it really is very weighing on the body. Eating on the road is always a challenge. Like right before I left, like I almost had a 6-pack. And then like I came back to New York and there is no 6-pack to be seen. So there's that. Like, it's like so hard. I had like a personal trainer and I was working with him before I left, and I fell off with that. And, some of the hotels we were able to stay at had gyms, so I was able to get in a workout here and there, but that's also really hard to maintain. So now I've been back, it's been about a week, and, we had a rough time trying to sync up before because I was so jet lagged. All I've been wanting to do was sleep, sleep, sleep. Even today, I just want to sleep, you know what I mean? But I got stuff to do, So that's just like part of the aftermath of a tour. But absolutely, the easiest part is when you're on stage. That's nothing. I could do that in my sleep. It's the up and down, the setup, the emails, the promoting, the money, the merch, it's a lot, but I asked for this. And so I have to remind myself that this is what comes with it, and to try to remember the fun part, the getting on stage. Actually, as I'm saying this, I'm kind of talking to myself because I definitely was stressing out today. So actually saying this to you guys is actually helping me. So thank you.
That's great to hear, that you're very with us here and everything. And I'm sure that, touring is definitely a different lifestyle, as you just explained. And I'm sure that it's definitely, not only a great opportunity, but a great experience for you in the long run, as it's been so far for you. So that's great to hear.
For sure.
Considering you've performed like a bunch of times all around. Have you ever like screwed up during a performance?
Yeah, I've definitely screwed up. But like my screw ups are like they're not I don't know if they're visible to people. Like
Mm-hmm.
I actually feel like I'm always screwing up. I guess like the past few months, I must say I do feel even more confident and like when it comes to like my voice and singing. But remember, I also am like doing live looping and samples and like flute. So there's like a lot of like moving pieces. So like a up for me would be like, oh, I forgot to trigger this. I triggered the wrong sample. But in which case it's jazz. So Miles Davis said, if you play a wrong note, play it again. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So there really aren't like mistakes that aren't salvageable, but yeah, I'm always like messing up. I'm always kicking myself in the butt, like, damn, like, why did I do that? Or I forgot to do this, you know, but it comes with the territory. I think I'm finally learning how to just leave it on the stage. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Like not overthink or put too much pressure on yourself.
Yeah, because I would like literally go into a deep depression for
Mm-hmm.
like a week if I felt like I messed up something on stage, you know, like, or if I feel like I forgot to like introduce someone or, you know, something like that, like stuff like that, like I'll like beat myself up. And I finally am learning that I can't do that because there's going to be so many ups. I'm going to mess up all the time. I'm human. You know what I mean? So I can't like die every week, you know what I mean? And try to resurrect myself again. It's too much.
So it's really about finding, the small things that are the good things that you already know. Like that was the best moment of this performance, or next time I'll do this, I'll definitely, repeat X or Y. And that's really important, to find those little things and
Well,
really reflect on your performances.
yeah, I think that also remembering why you're performing. I'm not performing just so I can hear myself sing and so I can feel good on stage. No, I'm like bringing people an experience. I'm helping people like relax and reflect and get some healing. I'm also a vessel and a testament of like whatever you believe in, you know what I mean? Like all like whatever your spiritual belief is, like we are living examples of divine creation. You know what I mean? So it's like it's about that more than like, oh, I held that note. It's like putting it into perspective.
Right, and of course, we mentioned earlier your message that you've been spreading about like individuality and really sharing what you love and what you enjoy. And I'm sure that you spread that every time that you perform and all of those times that you have. And of course, we can catch you at the Newport Jazz Festival, the 30th of July. Can you give us any behind the scenes on that, or you're not allowed to say, or what do we got?
I'm really excited. I'm gonna be bringing my brother Roger's on sax, Jonathan Michelle, my bass player. I really have all my guys, and Savannah Harris, incredible drummer. She's playing with me. She's been doing a lot of shows with me, but she also plays with Chris McBride and like all the top musicians. So it's always like tricky to get her, but she's gonna be there for that show. And yeah, we're just really excited to do music from Y'all Don't Care About Black Women, as well as original songs, some Haitian traditional songs. And it's just going to be a really fun, high energy, soulful, good time.
It looks like we're sort of running short on time. So thank you for being here, Melanie.
Thank you for having me. This was really fun.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. It's been a blast. Well, that's a wrap on this episode of the Non-Jazzheads Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show, and if you did, we have 2 more episodes lined up with some more phenomenal jazz artists. Thanks for watching or listening.